In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. Not a nasty, dirty, wet hole, filled with the ends of worms and an oozy smell, nor yet a dry, bare, sandy hole, with nothing in it to sit down on or to eat. It was a hobbit-hole, and that means comfort. Hello and welcome to the Friday Fantasy Show from the Bottled Imp, exploring the realms of fantasy. My name is Ken Boyter and today we're going to take a look at The Hobbit. Oh yes, considered one of the biggies of fantasy. This is of course written by J.R.R. Tolkien, as I like to say it, and this was first published way back in 1937. Can you believe that? That doesn't even feel real. It's still with us. This has been adapted into a film, into an animation, into an audio play. It's even got a graphic novel. So why is this such a classic? It's not only considered a fantasy classic, but an actual literary classic, considered by adults and children alike, as in loved, considered not just a children's classic. This version is a 1966 revised edition because Tolkien went back and changed a few things to keep it in line with its sequel, The Lord of the Rings. So let's just find out why it's such a loved book. The Hobbit. Just what is it all about? What's all the fuss about? Why did they spend millions and millions of dollars, I'm going to say pounds and dollars, on a film adaptation recently by Peter Jackson, but we'll get into that. The setup, what's the story? Well, the story is a very simple one. It's about a hobbit called Bilbo Baggins, and he lives in a hole, as I read out in the intro there. And he is one of these creatures that they love their home comforts. They like their food and their ale and their pipe smoking, and they basically like a quiet life. Well, as you can imagine, that's not going to happen to Bilbo. He is put upon by several knocks at the door. In fact, 13 knocks at the door, unexpectedly, and all the knocks are by dwarves. Yes, there's a party of dwarves that a couple come at a time, and a couple come at a time. It's a big surprise to him, and he wonders why. There must be some mistake, obviously. But then the wise wizard Gandalf turns up, and he says, no, I sent them to you because you are going to be part of this party. 13 is an unlucky number, and we need a 14th member to break the unluckiness. And not only that, Gandalf has told the dwarfs that Bilbo is a thief. Well, he isn't. So Gandalf's been a little bit naughty, but being a wise wizard, he kind of knows a thing or two about hobbits, and he knows about their resilience and their resourcefulness. Bilbo, on the other hand, isn't too keen. He's like, well, what, a thief? What is all this about? And it turns out that Thorin Oakenshield, who is the leader of the dwarves, he wants to claim his land back. They lived under a mountain, his ancestors, and they were kings and queens, and I'm not sure about queens. Was there queens? Scratch that. I'm sure Lord of the Rings and Hobbit fans will be up in arms. There's no dwarf queens. Anyway, his ancestors were royalty, let's put it that way. And unfortunately, a big dragon came along and decided that that the dragon wanted that mountain for himself. The dragon's called Smaug. And basically for ages it's been that way. Smaug has lived in this mountain and caused terror around all the local countryside. But Thorin has decided that he wants to claim his rightful land and his rightful treasure back. Yes, because there's lots of treasure in that mountain as well. So that's the setup. I'm not going to do any spoilers, I don't think. In fact, I'm pretty sure I won't. It's pretty common knowledge there's a dragon in there, just in case you think that's a spoiler. It's pretty common knowledge. He does go into that fairly early on in the story. So what are the themes of the book? The themes, well, one of the themes is maturity. It's coming of age and its identity. Bilbo's inner journey of someone who hasn't quite figured out their identity and hasn't quite figured out, I guess, almost their place in the world. Or so he thinks, because at the beginning, everything in Bilbo's life is how he thinks it ought to be. he's led a relatively comfortable life. He likes his home comforts. He kind of knows what he likes, but he hasn't been pushed emotionally or necessarily, physically as well. He hasn't, pushed his own boundaries. Nothing has challenged him enough, or we don't think so anyway, because there isn't much backstory to Bilbo. So this is really a story of how he has to go out into the world, leave his home comforts, leave his own home and his town, and not only that, he has to travel far and go through many experiences that are totally out of his comfort zone, that he hasn't met before. So he has to work out how he's going to, he either goes under and, gets defeated, or he has to work out a way of overcoming that. And the only way to do that is to rely on your own resourcefulness, your own inner self, and your own inner belief that you can actually overcome these obstacles. And by doing so, you then learn more about yourself, and then you learn more about your place in the world. And crucially, how other people see you, because they might look at you one way and think, well, they're not much of a much. And yet, when you start proving yourself, then they can start seeing a different person and start shaping their opinions or changing their opinions of exactly who you are and where you fit in the world. And it's actually Bilbo that, this isn't too much of a spoiler, he says, that Bilbo, part of this journey, does start to gradually become the leader of the party. And it's not through any arrogance or control or power. It's actually just through natural ability. Because Bilbo starts to become resourceful and starts to gain the confidence of the dwarfs, that they then just gravitate towards what he's got to say and his leadership. So of course, out of all of the characters, I would say Bilbo is the one that really does go not only on a physical journey, but also on an inner journey. And that's very important, I think. That's one of the key reasons why the book is so successful. Other themes include greed and selfishness. There's greed that does reoccur throughout the whole of the story. There's many examples of that, and not only just from one or two characters, but quite a few characters. Obviously, you've got the dwarfs, and even within the dwarfs, there's some of them are more greedy than others, if I can put it. Especially Thorin. Thorin does want to claim the treasure, and it's kind of he pretends that's not his main goal, but really it starts to reveal that it can actually corrupt you. So you can get very selfish if you kind of get clouded by greed and money and jewels and and what that can bring to you, and what that what you think mistakenly what that adds to you as a person. Then you can start to become very selfish, and that's, I guess, it's like when somebody becomes addicted to something, everything else just falls by the wayside and their life becomes very unbalanced. And there are some very good examples of that in this book. There is also another theme, a word that I can't pronounce, you'll be happy to know, and it's animism. Animism, which it almost sounds like animalism, but it's not quite. But it means not similar, but it is to do with animals. It's actually to do with the environment as well. It's to do with every living soul, as in, I'll start that again. Every thing has a living soul. So plants, rocks, any inanimate objects, and natural phenomena as well. So the wind, rain, everything is all connected, and it all has a living soul. And I guess part of the fascination and the love that children have for this book is that they seem to just naturally believe this, and it just feels instinctively correct. I remember as a kid, thinking exactly that kind of everything's connected, and that plants. I could talk to the plants. Hang on, I'm sounding very weird. Or I could, that the clouds had faces, and that they could speak, and that they would speak together, and they might have, battles or whatever, and lightning was part of somebody's, soul. That lightning was an outcome of the clouds being angry. So you can really buy into that. And what this does is that when you have the environment involved and things like birds and animals being able to talk, then what you get is I don't know, you get some sort of sense of mysticism. You get some sort of sense of there's more going on in this story than just the main story of Bilbo and the dwarves trying to get to the mountain and defeat the dragon. There is that bigger picture going on, and for me, again, that just broadens the horizons of this novel. This broadens it into not necessarily an epic, but it certainly starts to take on the appearance of a bigger story, that there's more going on in the universe than just us, if you see what I mean. So that has and not only does it, and it's not just there in the background, it actually starts to affect the characters and their decision making as well, because if things start to go against them, like the weather, they then have to alter their course of action. And I love that idea because it has a very real, very gritty nature to it. Of course, if you're planning a journey across wilderness and across mountains, and maybe there's snow and ice and rocks and dangerous rivers you have to cross, then of course the weather plays a part of it. And it's like, you know, when, say in America, when they were doing the frontier work, they were clearing woodland, they were building houses, creating towns. The weather and the environment are going to play a crucial part in your life, you know, because if it suddenly snows, you're not going to be want to go outside. You know, it's going to be difficult to do any work when you do that. Or if you're, you know, traveling along and suddenly, you know, there's a hurricane that hits you, yeah, you're going to be affected by that. You're going to try and avoid it. So again, that's a beautiful sort of aspect to the novel. Another theme is companionship. Now, obviously, in Lord of the Rings, well, not obviously because you might not have read it or seen it, but in Lord of the Rings there is the big strong companionship, the fellowship. There is this as well, but it is different. In The Hobbit, the companionship is to do with the dwarfs, mainly, but not only that, they're not always in step together. And then you have an outsider, you have Bilbo, so not everybody is on board right from the beginning, and the outsider had to work really hard to get them on side. So I think that shows very true to form human nature about when you've got a close-knit community, when you have outsiders come in, it's like, you know, you know, what are you doing in our pub? You know, it's that kind of mentality, and that's real. That's to do with fear. That's to do with protecting one's community, and so that outsider has to earn your trust. And it works both ways. If you're an outsider, then again, you need to, you know, I guess convince them of trust, but they also need to trust you as well. There needs to be that reciprocal relationship going on. And then you have Gandalf's companionship with Bilbo. And even though Gandalf isn't solidly in the story, he does disappear. He goes off and does stuff. I like to think he's going off, you know, because he wants to go and eat cake or something and just leaves them to it and then turns up again. But I'm sure he's got far more wizardy, important things than that. No, but there's still that strong companionship, and it's of a fatherly figure or an uncly figure that comes in and says, "No, Bilbo, I believe in you. Keep going. I have faith in you. I have faith in your resourcefulness. I have faith in who you are as a person. And your qualities and your morals, they're very important. Your principles are very important." And out of all of them, Bilbo has strong moral compass. He has strong principles. And again, that's something that children really like, that sense of justice. And again, I'm generalizing when I say all children, but, you know, I remember as a kid, that sense of justice. And I still have that sense of fairness and justice. And so Bilbo keeps that all the way through, and that's a beautiful quality to not have corrupted. So even though Gandalf isn't around all the time, he is there, and you kind of feel him because he's a wizard and he's a bit mystical. You kind of think, well, maybe he's something to do with the weather, and he does have the animals, because he does have the capability of communicating with the animals. So he totally believes in Bilbo, even when Bilbo doesn't have faith in himself, and that is hugely important. Now, for me, you could extrapolate that into faith and religion. You could say that Gandalf is, you know, like a godlike figurehead or Christ-like figurehead, and that he is just have faith not only in me, but have faith in yourself. That's very, very important. Even when, you know, in your darkest hour, there is always hope. And again, that's a very attractive quality and a very attractive theme, because hope is also another theme. And that, to me, couples with war. War does play a part in it. There is a build-up, a low-key build-up towards the latter end, and I don't want to spoil it too much, of this battle of the 5 armies. And again, Bilbo is involved in it, but he's involved in a very real way. He doesn't suddenly become all heroic and courageous and goes in and goes, yes, I'm going to attack somebody. No, he has to kind of find a different way of being courageous and heroic, and he does so, and that's the beauty, that's the payoff. So those are the main themes that I found within the novel. And you might think, wow, how could you, when I read this book earlier, when I was I think I read it when I was about 10, and then I remember reading it in my early 20s, and obviously reading it recently, I had the same feelings about what I didn't realise, though, that it was longer than I remember it, and I didn't pick up, I don't think, all of the themes that time round, and that's the beauty. This book has more depth to it than you particularly might first think, because it is such a simple story. You have a group of people that they've got something to achieve. They need to travel from here to here. It's a long way. It's a journey, and that's it. And then when we get there, we hope to achieve it. That's at its simplest. But there are so many levels to this, and I think that's partly why it's lasted this long. And not only that, I think for me, because I was thinking, why is it lasted? Why is it so loved? And for me, it's one of the key aspects is the narrator's voice. It's so warm and friendly and inviting and witty, and it's one of those. It's like an old, wizened man or a lovely wizened mother, that might be telling you a bedside story, and it's, they've got a wit about them and a charm, and there's light-heartedness when there needs to be, and it doesn't get ultra gritty. It's nothing like Game of Thrones, obviously, but there are a few bits that you might think, oh, okay, that's getting a bit real, but yet there's counterpointed with the comedy aspect of it, and I love that aspect. And it's almost like Gandalf is telling you this story. There's no patronising in there, so if it's written for kids, there's no patronising in there, and there is that reassuring that yes, there is danger, but don't worry, I kind of know what's going to happen, everything will be fine. And like I say, there was that depth to it as well. And with the Bilbo character, I think a lot of children and adults as well, Bilbo is us. He is somebody that's going out of his comfort zone. He doesn't know much about the land. He doesn't know much about, he's kind of heard things and rumours. So he's, and he's well read, but he's not experienced it. And so therefore, we are going on that journey. Bilbo is us. We are Bilbo is the reader's eye. So we're learning with Bilbo. And to me, again, that's crucial. And we grow as a person as we learn more about the land and Middle Earth itself. All the characters are pretty believable as well. One or two could be fleshed out a little bit more, but you don't necessarily mind that. If you've got 13 dwarfs, that's a lot of character to kind of really flesh out. You get hints of them, you get flavours of them, and that's kind of all you really need. I was a little bit surprised that Thorin didn't feature more in it. Those of you that have seen the film, he does feature quite heavily, but then they did 3 films, so they needed to flesh out all the characters more. In this, I don't think you do, because it becomes very clear that Bilbo is the main character, and then I would even say that Gandalf is a secondary character. And also, I do like the format. It seemed to be a series of short stories almost. Each chapter was dealt with a different event within the journey. So it wasn't like there was loads of subplots going on as well. So it seemed like it was episodic, and again that added to the journey aspect of it. So we're going from here to here, and that will take say 2 weeks. And then, oh look, something happens and they have to overcome that, or they meet somebody that could be friendly, but they're not 100% sure, and then they have to deal with that. So there are some brilliant characters that you meet along the way, and it was full of imagination as well. And of course, Tolkien was an academic, and he drew on Norse mythology, on lots of other mythology as well, and he really loved languages and linguistics. So he started to create some of his own language as well. And this was the cornerstone. This then led to The Lord of the Rings, which I believe took him 14 years to write, because he wanted to enrich the world. He wanted to really make sure that the world made sense. And again, that's key. Although there isn't a massive amount of world building as such, certainly nowadays you get loads of world building when you read novels, you do get enough to really feel like it is a real world, and a world that you want to explore, a world you want to actually live in. So I can totally understand why people love it. And also, in this edition, there are some illustrations as well that Tolkien drew himself. He never confessed to be a brilliant artist, but he just had an idea of what he wanted to convey. He sent those off to the publishers. I think he did 8 originally, or 4 originally, and they asked for some more. And then they loved them so much they asked him to do the cover as well. And so the cover and all the illustrations do have a very, it's like almost designy feel, has a sort of symmetrical design feel. And again, but they're very charming, that adds to the charm. And that's another word I want to put to this book. It's very charming, it draws you in. It's almost like, come sit by the side, by the fireside, you know, grab some cheese and some ale and some cider. Not necessarily if you're a kid, but we'll tell you a story. It has that charm to it. I absolutely adored it. I fell in love with this again. It's one of those books you can go back and read again and again. So there we are, The Hobbit. The Hobbit! Yes! We have reviewed this, and I wanted to take my time in reviewing this. I didn't want to rush this. I didn't want to think, oh yeah, I know The Hobbit. No, I wanted to reread it, and I wanted to take my time, and I'm glad I did, because you will love this. If you haven't read The Hobbit, but you kind of think, oh, I know The Hobbit, I've maybe seen the film, or, you know, I've played a video game or whatever like this, you would be surprised. If you're an adult, you will love it. Even though it's meant to be a kid's book, I think it transcends that. It's one of these books that transcends from being a kid's book into an adult book. And it's one of those books you can reread. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed that. And we do have loads more reviews on our YouTube channel, so please go and subscribe if you haven't done so already, because then you'll be notified straight away when a new video comes out. Not only that, we've got a Facebook book. We've got a face and a book. Put them together, we've got a Facebook group. That's what I'm trying to say. And it is called the Bottled Imp Fellowship. Slightly influenced maybe by Lord of the Rings there. Search for that, click the join button, and we'll add you in. Remember to share our videos as well, because the more the merrier. Until next time, remember to keep it unreal, especially if you're a talking dragon.